Welcome back to Irreverend. We've been away, but we are here once again. Me, the Reverend Jamie Franklin, and today with Daniel French. Thomas is not here. Where is he? I don't know. He just said he's not here. So I hope you're having a nice time, Thomas, whatever you're doing. Daniel, how are you today?
I'm fine. I was thinking, isn't there a biblical allusion, isn't it, that Thomas was not there at the resurrection, at the first meeting with Christ, and then
he doubted.
And he doubted.
What a letdown that must have been for Jesus. Hopefully, the other Tom won't let Jesus down in the same way upon his return. I'm sure he won't. I don't really know what that means. But no, it's good to see you, Daniel, here, and hope you're doing well. You've just been eating some chips, haven't you? So hopefully, working our way through. Yeah.
Local chip. I just realised I hadn't really eaten all day and was starting to feel a bit headachy. So as I zoomed up here, I thought, let's get some chips.
Good idea. We mustn't talk too much about food though, because we might fall into the trap of when we did that episode where we talked about cereal for ages, and that was our most complained about segment of all the controversial things we've said and done on this show. That was the most complained about thing. By a long way. People said, don't talk about that stuff. You've got miles more important things to talk about. And indeed we do, Daniel. Lots more important stuff. But let's start with some notices, because I always forget the notices, right? So this is Irreverent Faith in Current Affairs. Thanks very much for watching or listening. So you find us on YouTube. Just type it into YouTube. You can find it. irreverent.buzzsprout.com for our audio. You can support the show on patreon.com/irreverent for as little as £1.50 plus VAT a month, which is really not very much at all. You get the episodes early and also get access to all the bants on the Patreon website. And is there anything else? Yes, we have a Telegram group, t.me/irreverentpod, and follow us on Twitter @irreverent.pod, or email us indeed, irreverentpod@gmail.com. Now, because I've been away on holiday, I'm still struggling through the emails, so I'm a bit out of touch with the newer one. So apologies if you emailed several weeks ago and you still haven't got a response. We will respond at some point. I promise. I absolutely promise. Those are all the notices.
I wonder, Jamie, if you could tell folks who are not familiar what Telegram is and how they might download that.
I find Telegram actually really confusing, I have to say. So you just download your Telegram app on the App Store, and then I think what you need to do is you just need to search for you know what, Daniel, how do you do it? I'm just looking at Telegram now. I've got it on here. I think what you do is you just go to search and you just search for Irreverence. That's or another tip, Daniel. Go onto Google, or better yet, DuckDuckGo, and type in "how do I use Telegram," and that will tell you. But I think if you type in t.me/irreverentpod on your browser, it should come up. I think that's what you do. Anyway, so something like that. And was there another question there, Daniel? I realised I haven't really answered the first question.
So from within using Telegraph, what will people have? What will...
I see what you mean. Why use it? What's so good about it? Well, it's a bit like it's a kind of like mixture, I suppose, of Twitter and sort of being part of a Facebook group. So it's not private, but you have to join the group. So it's only people who are sympathetic who are on the group. So it's much more of it's less of a sort of argument kind of platform and more just place where people sort of, the person who runs the group shares things and then people can have conversation underneath. So I actually find it a much pleasanter environment than Twitter. Twitter's, it's nasty, really.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a knife fight, isn't it, Twitter? But Telegram's a bit nicer because you can choose who you can follow. And it's a nicely designed app. I find it really easy to use, really easy to share things. And I often, when I haven't done any research for the show, Daniel, because I've been, because I've been disorganized or whatever, sometimes I just go on our Twitter account. I say, does anyone know anything about X, Y, or Z? And I frequently get, well, I always get really, really helpful answers. So thanks to everyone for that.
Well, there's nothing wrong with delegation.
Exactly.
You're working in the Lord's vineyard, and there's
exactly. Amen.
in that as well. So.
Amen. Body of Christ and all of that kind of things.
Yeah.
I wanted to just say I was clearing up my office yesterday because I've been doing a lot of clearing up recently. And
is this the office behind us? I've always been intrigued by the.
This office that I'm in. I'm going to talk more about this at some other point, but I've been reading this really good book on. It's called what's it called? The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up. And a lot of it's about discarding things, which I found very liberating. But I actually found something yesterday in a pile of letters or papers, I guess it was. It was a letter, a handwritten letter that was written to me and to us more broadly by a gentleman called Carl, who lives in Bishop's Waltham, which is a lovely place just near where I used to live in Hampshire. And it's a lovely, he's got lovely handwriting. I just wanted to give him a shout. So he writes that he usually finds himself disappointed with the good old C of E, particularly the leadership. He couldn't sing hymns, etc. So he went on YouTube and started searching for hymns, and the YouTube algorithm suggested he watch our show, and that's how he came across us. And he says, I'm delighted to see you and your colleague put some much needed ginger into the organization. I hadn't heard that phrase before, but I know what he means. And he then says about his all-time favorite vicar, who's a man called Father Michael, who retired to Nottingham. He asked me if I know him. And indeed, I do know Father Michael, and he preached at my priestly ordination, and he's a good friend of mine. So I just wanted to give Carl a shout out and say thanks so much for writing that lovely handwritten letter. I don't really give my address out on this show, but if you're sorry, one of my kids is crying. If you are enthusiastic enough about writing me a handwritten letter, you can always have a think about how you might find an address where I might find one, because that's what Carl did, and I received it, although it did get buried in a big mound of papers. Now, Daniel, big news. Do you want to hear what the biggest news of the week is? Yes. Okay. Right. The enthusiasm is palpable. Okay. So the Premier League, right? The football. Yeah. You remember this? The football. Now, yeah. So the big question, Daniel, is will the players in the Premier League continue to take the knee for all 38 games of the next Premier League season? Do you know what the answer is, Daniel?
It sounds a bit borderline.
Yeah. But you'll be pleased to know that the answer is yes. And this statement that the players have released, I mean, this is inspiring. Here we go. So the players, they're all going to take the knee, all of them. This season, they did a whole year. They've done it for a whole year, but now they're doing it for another year, just to show those people, to show the racists. And they say, we feel now more than ever, Daniel, it is important for us to continue to take the knee as a symbol of our unity against all forms of racism. Very, very important, more than ever, more than during the 1960s in the south of the USA, more than at the beginning of the 19th century during the abolition of the slave trade, more than during the periods of mass slavery and enslavement in the Roman and Persian Empire, more than the time of the Spartan Empire and their suppression of the Helot people. Now, more than ever, it's more than ever. It's the most important time ever to be against racism now. And they say we remain resolutely committed to our singular objective. Hear this. The singular objective of eradicating racial prejudice wherever it exists, to bring about a global society of inclusion, respect, and equal opportunities for all. I didn't realize that football was so powerful, Daniel, but it seems like the football players, through taking the knee, are going to bring about the long hoped for utopia, which was birthed in the heart of St. Thomas More in the 16th century, and has been not really properly realized through all the iterations of the various utopian regimes and political philosophies that have come after. But can you believe it? The football players, Daniel, they're going to bring it about. Are you inspired?
Well, what can I say? It's Revelation 21 stuff, isn't it? And I feel the mothership coming down, and New Jerusalem. And I imagine the sort of existential writings around us are going to be amazing.
Yes. Well, indeed.
Yeah. Wow. What can I say?
Global
here
society.
I am, a football ignoramus, with my only sort of my simple questions about the beautiful game, and things like, why can't the goals be a bit wider? 'Cause it'll be a bit more exciting. But if only I knew the sort of geopolitics involved.
Well, yes, indeed. I mean, it's well, what can we say? It's inspiring. They want to bring about tangible change and remove inequality from the game. No more inequality. And the old taking the knee, that's going to sort that one right out, Daniel.
Well, that's tick. That's that done, isn't it?
Bring about global society of inclusion and equality. Tick. But what kind of equality are they talking about, Daniel? Are they talking about equality before the law, or are they utilizing the Marxist concept of equality of outcome? Because those are very different things.
I feel that could be a really interesting seminar between you and
Marcus Rashford. Yeah, exactly. Oh, by the way, on the last episode, which was a couple of weeks ago now, and probably nobody cares, but I meant to reference the name of the anarcho-capitalist Murray Rothbard, and I accidentally said Rothschild, which is of course the name of one of these incredibly powerful families that are probably running the world. So that was an intellectually embarrassing moment for me. So I apologize to any Murray Rothbard fans out there who picked that one up, and indeed to all our audience, because I've just let everyone down.
Grown men were crying in the streets.
It was embarrassing, to be honest. I mean, when you're trying to make a funny joke, which makes you look intellectually smug, then, you know, you better get the name right of the person you're referencing, because it's pretty embarrassing, to be honest with you. But, you know, I'm just a human being, Daniel. Get things
another
wrong.
Year on the curacy, I think, added on. IME 20. Indeed.
But it's good to be back, Daniel. And now I think we should go for our scripture section. Now, I've got quite an interesting scripture. I don't know what lectionary do you use, Daniel? When you're doing your morning and evening prayer, do you use the old common worship, or what do you use?
Well, it's a little bit of this and that. I have been recently trying at least several times a week to use the prayer book lectionary.
All right, yeah. Which one?
A bit of Sunday, a bit of weekday, just to keep my awe into it, really.
Yeah. Do you use the 1922? This is going to get a bit esoteric.
No, I'm not that clever. Aside from that, we've got a Franciscan lectionary which we use in the parish, which was a precursor to the current Church of England liturgy for morning and evening prayer.
Yeah.
The problem is it's out of print, so me and the interns use that. Yeah. I have to say it's looking a bit tatty now, and I'm looking to get it book bound, but I've got an RSV.
Oh, I use the RSV. Good choice.
Bible, which I had given to me at seminary, and I've written. It's written with huge book margins, so you can write notes in. So
nice.
I've got loads and loads of notes, and I've just been exploring about maybe having a go at a bit of bookbinding too. Because it's so precious. It's my most precious Bible. So I try to use that when I look up the scripture for the day, because I really like the RSV. Me
too. The NRSV is a big departure from any kind of reasonable translation, in my opinion, because of its the way it mistranslates all the pronouns and words that mean man. But let's not we don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole, do we? Because some listeners are thinking, what on earth are you talking about? But RSV is a really good translation, actually, if anyone's interested. So anyway, no, I use at the moment, I'm using the 1922 Book of Common Prayer lectionary. There's a really interesting reading which pertains to live issue, and you'll see what this is. You'll see where I'm going with this as I read this. But it's in 2 Chronicles 26. Now, the books of Kings and Chronicles, they're kind of like, well, they are what they sound like. They're a list of kings and events that happened in Israel and Judah. And essentially, every section kind of begins by introducing a king and then saying he either did evil in the sight of the Lord or he did good in the sight of the Lord. And this one in particular, 2 Chronicles 26, is quite interesting because it talks about the king of Judah, whose name was Uzziah. And at first, he's a good king and does lots of good stuff. But, and this is where the reading kicks in. It says this: when he was strong, this is Uzziah, he grew proud to his destruction, for he was false to the Lord his God, and entered the temple of the Lord to burn incense on the altar of incense. But Azariah the priest went in after him with 80 priests of the Lord, who were men of valor. And they withstood King Uzziah and said to him, "It is not for you, Uzziah, to burn incense to the Lord, but for the priests, the sons of Aaron, who are consecrated to burn incense. Go out of the sanctuary, for you have done wrong, and it will bring you no honor from the Lord God." Then Uzziah was angry. Now he had a censer in his hand to burn incense. And when he became angry with the priests, leprosy broke out on his forehead in the presence of the priests in the house of the Lord by the altar of incense. And Azariah the chief priest and all the priests looked at him, and behold, he was leprous in his forehead. And they thrust him out quickly, and he himself hastened to go out, because the Lord had smitten him. And King Uzziah was a leper to the day of his death, and being a leper dwelt in a separate house, for he was excluded from the house of the Lord. I thought it was quite an interesting passage to read at this time. And, you know, I think it's fairly clear probably for everyone listening what's going on is that as a king, King Uzziah had great power and authority, but at the same time, his authority was limited to a certain sphere, and he didn't have the same authority that he had in civic or temporal matters in the temple. And so when he goes into the temple and starts burning incense in the temple, he's actually transgressing a boundary. And he does it here because, well, it said that he became proud. And so he thought, well, I'll just arrogate to myself this responsibility. And then the priests, 80, I think it says 80 men of valor come and accuse him of his wrongdoing. And eventually he's smitten by the Lord with leprosy. But I thought it was quite an interesting parable for our times, Daniel. Obviously, I'm referring to the old vaccine passport issues, which I think we did talk about a couple of weeks ago, didn't we? But I'm not sure really. I can't quite remember what had happened at that point. But this issue is obviously becoming live again. The government just thought they'd drop this in just before the parliamentary recess, that there would be vaccine passports in nightclubs and other crowded venues, without actually specifying what those venues are going to be. And really, I mean, one of the things I would say about this theologically is that the government has certain responsibilities, and I think the New Testament teaches that God has placed governors and princes over us in order to keep a certain level of order. But there is an appropriate sphere which the government operates in, and in arrogating to itself the capacity or the responsibility to control the church through saying who can come in and who is not allowed to come in, the government are transgressing a boundary, a very significant boundary, in the same way as King Uzziah was. So I thought it was quite an interesting passage.
Yeah, I can see where you're going with that now, and I suppose looking to say something like the Book of Revelation, what we see is instances how tyrannies can stack up, and you can get a totalizing tyranny. You know, that's the great temptation in leadership, isn't it? To control everything.
Yeah.
And there's a sort of vanity within that. If not egomania and narcissism, and that those who go down that path will find that God has created a nature which is rigged against them. You know, so he gets in the narrative you've just given us, he is bodily breaking down with leprosy because he has pushed himself beyond the boundaries of who he is. It reminded me a bit of the sort of kosher diet rules as well, isn't it? That there are things that are not meant to be crossed. So you don't eat those things which transgress, like toads, frogs, unless you're French. Because they are creatures of the land and the sea. And you should either eat creatures of the land or creatures of the sea, but not something that does both. And so I can see that within Isaiah's leadership, he is transgressing both a priestly. He's trying to bring into himself a priestly role, which is not in his vocation, because all those three vocations of prophet, priest, and king can only be inhabited by one individual, which is the Messiah, Christ.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, no, very good points. And I like this bit as well in the story when the 80 priests, men of valor, come and confront King Uzziah. And we wouldn't want to arrogate to ourselves this kind of status. But of course, we would encourage everyone who is in any kind of position of leadership to think really seriously about what you're going to do about this particular situation. And I don't know whether I told you this, Daniel, but we're reopening the vaccine passport letter that we did in April. We're just reopening it for signatures because we feel that the issue has become very pertinent once again. So we've got about 1,600 signatures on it, and it's open basically. It's a letter. It's at vaccinepassport.wordpress.com. It's a letter which expresses opposition to the notion of vaccine passports, both in society in general, but also in the church in particular. And it's open for leaders of churches or leaders in churches. So you don't have to be the leader or the vicar. You can just have a leadership role, or leaders in Christian organizations to sign. And we really hope that this gains some momentum again, because it does seem increasingly likely that this issue is going to affect the church. And
so we'll put that in the show notes, the link.
Of course, we'll definitely.
So that folks can get to that easily and share that around.
Absolutely. Yeah. Good point, Daniel. Yeah, it will definitely be in the show notes, vaccinepassportletter.wordpress.com, and share it around and sign it if you can.
Well, now's a very pertinent time, isn't it? It's become strangely, we were a little bit ahead of our time. I think in that it's now become a real culture war issue. Between libertarians and, I don't know what you call the opposite of libertarians.
Totalitarians.
Totalitarians.
It's hard to know, isn't it? This was a point that Jonathan Sumption made in his article, which we might talk about later, is that the word libertarian has been co-opted as a term of abuse. Where he says he's proud to be a libertarian because he thinks that personal freedom is the way to live a fulfilled and creative human life. It's very strange how this word has been turned into a term of abuse when it used to be something unambiguously positive, and for lots of people anyway. And the opposite. What is the opposite of libertarian? Seriously, is it totalitarian? Is that what people are proud of being now? Sorry,
answers on Telegram.
Yeah, exactly.
Now that you know how to download it, give us an answer. What is that?
Yeah, now that we've explained it in such crystal clear terms, how to join the Telegram group, it's part of the mystery that it's quite a difficult to use app. But Daniel, some strange developments reported on. A number of people have emailed about this, but it's reported very well on the what's now the dailyskeptic.org website, which used to be the Lockdown Skeptics. This is very odd. The United Beach Missions, which appears to be some kind of evangelistic thing that happens on a beach or on beaches, plural, not sure. Anyway, it's requiring the people who participate as volunteers in its summer activities, many of them young people, to be vaccinated. And there's some correspondence between a lady who got in touch with the leader of the beach missions and the person who runs it, and mentions a number of things about side effects of the vaccines, the abortion issue, the use of fetal stem cells, and so on and so forth. Another thing that's really strange about this is that I'm fairly sure that the man who replied, whose name is actually edited out here, I can't actually remember his name, but the person who's in charge of UBM actually signed our vaccine passport letter in April, which is very, very odd. As I say, I can't remember his name, but he signed our letter, and then basically, I know this because somebody's copied me into the correspondence in another way, and then has done this. So very, very odd. So I read some of this letter out. The response, they say, "Thank you for your letter, which we have read with interest. I'm sure you will agree that we're in very difficult days. The steps we have reluctantly taken have been done so with the best of intentions and prayerfully before the Lord. They've been taken in line with the best Christian and medical advice available and with the overarching aim of keeping people safe. We are therefore asking those who come on teams this year to have had the vaccine with the aim of keeping others safe. The issue is the risk to people closely sharing living accommodation, and we are seeking to protect and care for people by limiting transmission, isolation, and people getting long COVID. We sought to minimize the risk. We accept it's unlikely to be a perfect set of decisions, etc. The stance of UBM on these ethical questions is very much in line with the churches from which our members come and in line with other Christian organizations. UBM is not pro-abortion. We made this very clear, etc. We accept that the vaccination raises important questions. We fully respect the conscientious objections of other believers in not taking the vaccine. There are others, however, who...
But they can't come.
Yeah, but they're not welcome. Yeah, exactly.
They're not welcome.
Exactly.
Let's just underline that. We respect you, but you can't come.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
you can't hear the life-saving message of Jesus Christ.
Yeah,
on a beach.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
just you know.
Yeah, exactly. You're not allowed. There are others who, in good conscience, believe that to take a vaccine is the better pro-life decision. We trust that you appreciate their position. Ultimately, we all have the same Lord to whom we must answer. Well, that's thank you for your support for UBM. We ask for your forbearance and prayers, that we may be given wisdom and help in undertaking the mission this year.
Prayers maybe, praise not.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know what your response to this response is, Daniel, but it strikes me as quite it's like the kind of answer you might get from an MP. I mean, with a bit of Christian stuff chucked in, isn't it? Like, we've taken this in line with the best Christian and medical advice available, rather than actually engaging with any of the arguments that have been put forward. It's kind of a euphemism, isn't it? Well, this is the best advice. The abortion thing, well, you know, our viewpoint reflects the viewpoint of the churches from whom our members come. So basically, you know, that's it's not really an argument, is it? I don't know what you think.
And we're terrified of getting this on the beach.
Yeah. Well, beaches are very dangerous places, as you know.
Yeah.
There's been all sorts of COVID outbreaks, people just dropping dead on beaches, left, right, and centre. But yeah, I mean, you know, this is one of the things in our letter. We made this point back in April, and I think it's actually become even more pertinent now. Is that this is all based on the assumption, apart from anything else, apart from the stuff about fetal cell lines and discrimination and side effects and all this kind of stuff, which I think are absolutely central as well. This is all based on the idea that having this vaccine is going to stop you transmitting the virus, stop you being infected and then transmitting the virus, and that people who haven't had it can't or are more likely to transmit the virus. Now, as far as I can tell, this is just an assumption, and the evidence that is coming in is increasingly that people who have been vaccinated are both acquiring the virus and they're transmitting it, and also that people who haven't had the vaccine might have natural immunity, so they might not be able to transmit the virus. So this is like a totally arbitrary thing, scientifically, I would say, or logically. And for these people to be just jumping on board at this early stage where the government haven't even yet tried to push this, it's not been voted through Parliament for nightclubs or anything. You know, it just strikes me as a kind of, you know, it's like zeal for your vaccine will consume me, isn't it?
It's crazy. And it's all the more astonishing that it's an evangelistic beach mission. It's outdoors, for goodness sake.
Yeah.
Where there's lots of sunshine and vitamin D, and it's about health and running around and taking little risks and having wow time. And here you've got this, as well as you say, the whole passport thing is a bizarre it's really rather bizarre, as you said, that it's clear that the vaccine ability to stop transmissions is extremely limited.
Yeah.
And in fact, you could argue that potentially, I think this bore out a few weeks ago, that there were more people who were transmitting who were vaccinated, who were double jabbed. Because clearly, if you're double jabbed, you're going to have a certain confidence to be more social and engage and get back with your peers and go and do all the normal things that we ought to be doing. So you're more likely to be transmitting this and shedding this. So vaccinated, we're getting more COVID than the unvaccinated.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that doesn't, statistically, you could say, being in a tent with three others who are vaccinated, they maybe have COVID, and you don't.
Yeah, and maybe it's actually good for a bunch of young people to get together and get COVID and increase the level of people who have natural immunity. But natural immunity is just been taken off the table as an option now. I mean, Daniel, I can't help but be suspicious about what's going on. I mean, we'll talk about this extraordinary Daily Mail article in a moment. But we've got an excellent article here by Doug Wilson. Doug Wilson's a pastor. I forget actually where he is. But honestly, his blog, which I've just come back to this week, it is so good. DougWills.com, DougWils.com. And he's got this excellent blog post called "Kicked Out of Hell for Lying," which is I mean, it's absolutely applicable here as well. In the UK, it sounds like the experts in America, so-called experts, play all the same game and do games and do all the same stuff that they do here. He's got this brilliant observation when he talks about them. He says there is a sweet spot for them in all of this, and some of them are up to the challenge. It's not as though they have no comebacks when medical laymen like me rant. They do have people who can come out on the TV and say stuff when it is their turn to talk. And these people do have a rare talent. This is good. They have to be stupid enough to believe the narrative and clever enough to defend it. There is a delicate equilibrium to be maintained there. And one of the defenses that they would be sure to mount is that they are trained professionals and I am just a ranting Yahoo. So yeah, that's what they need to be: stupid enough to believe the narrative, but clever enough to defend it. And then he's got this really good bit here. And this is where I'm going with this, about this vaccine passport thing. Occam's razor teaches us that the simplest explanation is most likely to be the true one. And the simplest explanation for this whole thing is that this whole thing is just one long, sustained, massive power grab. So I'm going with that. If you're aware of Occam's rope, which says that sometimes a convoluted explanation, one that gets tangled up in multiple knots, like what your extension cord does to itself in the garage over the winter, can be politically expedient for liars in the short term. But when political officials and hacks resort to those knots and tangles too many times, climbing up into the attic of lame excuses to fetch it down again, they sometimes trip and fall down the stairs of truth into the ball of rope they're carrying and wind up hanging themselves with Occam's noose. That's the thumping and kicking sound you are hearing right now. And he goes on to apologize for the overheated metaphor. But Daniel, this is essentially what any reasonable person, I think, must be worried about now, is that this is a power grab, basically. I was hearing Jonathan, what's his name? The guy I used to have respect for, Rees-Mogg. Jacob Rees-Mogg, sorry. It's been so long since I thought about him that I've forgotten his name. Jacob Rees-Mogg, talking about we will give them their freedoms back. Their freedoms will be given back intact. I think it is very important that the freedoms are given back intact, but to lose the ability to frequent a nightclub for a time is a loss that we can bear. But the fact is if that's the case, why can you no longer present a negative test when you're going to a nightclub in September? Why have they made it vaccination only? Why can't you show immunity or that you don't have the virus in another way? You know, we're all wondering, because really what it seems like is that they are just trying to pressurize people, as many people as possible, into getting vaccinated. And from a logical perspective, now, admittedly, we are laymen. I am not a doctor. I am a doctor, but not a medical doctor. But it seems to be the case that there are other ways of not getting COVID and not transmitting COVID apart from having a vaccine, which would be to acquire natural immunity in some way. Why is that no longer an option? Are we being paranoid, Daniel?
I've noticed recently a number of pieces in the press from those I would say are very pro-vaccine, who are arguing that this whole push from the government and governments across the West clearly hasn't learned the lessons of Brexit. You know, how to rub people up the wrong way is by being coercive, by telling them that you're going to give them their rights at some future point, or that you're going to adjust their rights. That the experts know best. Remember Michael Gove telling us during Brexit about the experts.
Yep.
You know, we wanted to end the tyranny of the experts. Michael, yes.
He's changed his tune now.
He's tuned out on that one, yeah.
Changed his mind.
You know, there are a whole load of political lessons about how we treat public discourse, and we just seem to be going round again in the same manner. How tragic, you know, even if this wasn't a power grab, this is the wrong way to do it, to achieve those ends.
Yeah.
By infantilizing the general public.
Yeah.
Rather than getting them on side. You know, and right from the beginning, I think, you know, not being upfront about the safety of vaccines, but by just sort of glibly saying, oh, well, it's all, you know, 100% safe. And then you have parts of the European Union saying, well, we're not going to put out this vaccine or that vaccine because of safety issues. And then you got egg on your face.
Yeah.
Because you haven't treated people like adults and said, well, actually, there is a risk. And maybe we can leave that to you as a free citizen to make that decision. And likewise, you know, we'd go right back to lockdown, couldn't we? Instead of locking down and doing the CCP method of world controlling, you know, wouldn't it have been a much more British, European, American way to have said, well, you decide where the lines of responsibility are.
Yeah.
But we're not going to put you under martial law or anything like that. We're going to instead protect the vulnerable and give you the choice and freedom to do what you think is correct.
Yep.
Because in the end, what this is communicated is that our overlords have contempt for us.
Yep.
And just as 2-3 years ago, the whole Brexit issue, it was one about contempt, elites having contempt for the great masses.
Yeah.
And you just feel, you know, it's like you say, long term, this is not going to help advance respect and trust for politics or science.
Yeah. And indeed, many people are very worried, and I would count myself among them, that this is, this is a phase in some kind of plan, which may be inchoate, but nevertheless exists, to bring about a world that is significantly less free than the one that we used to live in. And the minute you have this kind of vaccine passport system up, you know for a fact that contrary to Jacob Rees-Mogg's pronouncements, that they're going to start including other things in it. First, it will be the booster shots. Then we've already heard politicians suggesting that the flu jab should be treated in the same way. And then we've also had this thing. I think we haven't done an episode since this was suggested, that the government are going to start giving. They're going to start giving rewards or prizes for doing exercise and eating healthy food. I mean, they're just losing. The Conservative government is just losing the plot, isn't it? But you see
dietary social credit.
Yeah, exactly. You see this stuff happen. Look, I exercise a lot and I eat healthily. There's no way I'm reporting any of that to the government. You could just take a step back. None of your business, quite frankly. But
the irony is they're how giving junk food vouchers if you get the jab.
Oh my goodness, it is.
How inconsistent is that?
Yeah,
how
they're giving people ice cream,
which reports you if you accidentally slip in a Cadbury's chocolate bar in your trolley,
a dairy milk,
and don't do your 10,000 steps.
Yeah, honestly, it's and the government wonders why people are paranoid and won't take the vaccine. I mean, it's because they're worried that we're moving towards a Chinese-style social credit system, which will include, it will include your diet, it will include what medicines you've had, it will include what vaccinations you've had, and it will be linked to a digital currency so they can control your money and so on and so forth. People think that this is crazy, but why think it's crazy when you can actually see it happening? We are being manipulated into this discarding of our liberty.
Well, when I add to that, Jamie, when you say that we're not only being manipulated, but there is now a large portion of the population for whom this is kind of quite comforting.
Yeah.
Who quite like for the nanny state to regulise every part of their lives. This is a comfort.
Yeah, it's brave new world.
This is abrogating. I can abrogate the whole business of safety and health and finance to someone else.
Yeah, it's brave new world.
Yeah,
you keep us safe. You keep us safe and happy, and we'll give you all of the
rights.
Yeah, we'll give you every single significant decision that we would make as a human being. You can make that, and then you just make sure that we're safe and happy. Give us our Soma. I'm not really sure what the equivalent of Soma is. Probably Netflix. You give us our Soma, and you give us the furlough scheme, and then you can make all our decisions for us. You can even tell us what to eat.
It's actually 5 films on Netflix you'll get free.
Yeah.
For vaccination.
Ironically, is that right? Is that actually true? I thought you were joking. Flipping heck. 5 films. Oh my
God, what would be your 5 films?
Oh, that's a good question. To be honest, I've been watching a lot of period drama recently because I find it comforting. Among my favourites is The Remains of the Day. Have you seen that with? Oh, you've not watched The Remains of the Day? Oh, it's such a good. Just a little side issue is that the guy who wrote it, Kazuo Ishiguro, who, I think he won the Nobel Prize for Literature. He did the same degree as me at the University of Kent many years before me.
We like the University of Kent.
We do indeed, yeah, English literature and philosophy. So, people might think, English literature and philosophy, University of Kent, that's a bit obscure, isn't it? Well, tell that to Nobel Prize winning author Kazuo Ishiguro. Then have a long, hard think about it. Anyway, sorry, that's a slight digression, pretty major digression. What were we talking about? Oh yeah, so incentives for vaccines. There was quite a funny conversation on the London Calling podcast where Toby Young and James Dellingpole were talking about how much money they'd have to be paid to take the vaccine.
Dellingpole wasn't going to give way, was he? 50 million.
No, he said he wouldn't do it for £10 million, which I thought was good, actually. I wouldn't do it for £10 million either. Anyway, so I forget what we were talking about. Oh yeah, what is going on? Why are the government trying to usher in some kind of social credit, Chinese-style social credit system? Not really sure, but I don't think people are crazy for thinking these things. But it is, Daniel, it's getting ludicrous now, isn't it? It really is. Daily Mail article that we were talking about, the next COVID variant could kill up to, wait for it, 1 in 3 people. You thought that the last ones were bad when with their kill rate of 1 in 10,000 people. 1 in 3. It's going up. It's going up. It's going right up.
Suddenly undertakers are looking very
they're rubbing their yeah. A doomsday COVID variant that's going to kill up to 1 in 3 people is a realistic possibility according to the government's top scientists. And guess who said this? It was the Scientific Advisory Group for Emergencies. Good old SAGE.
But did you notice it was a whistleblowers within? They've remained anonymous.
A whistleblower what? Has said what? That this is
From
going
within
to...
SAGE.
What? That has released this?
Unnamed, yeah.
Oh, an unnamed whistleblower. Did his name rhyme with Schmiel Bergerson by any chance? In a downside of Britain's hugely successful vaccination drive.
Slight downside.
Slight downside.
Just inconvenience.
Slight inconvenience. The team warned the country's greater levels of immunity may help speed up the virus's evolutionary process. What? So because of the vaccine, 1 in 3 people are going to die. Rolling out booster vaccines this winter and curbing transmission may help prevent a mutant strain occurring. So this paper is saying that because of the vaccine, 1 in 3 people are going to die because the virus will mutate into a more deadly strain. And that the answer to this problem that has been caused by the vaccines is to roll out a booster vaccine, which will curb transmission and help prevent a mutant strain occurring. I tell you, this goes back to the thing, doesn't it, about us being laymen. But as a layman, like using my brain, using logic, it doesn't seem to be something which is particularly sensible to do. If a vaccine has caused 1 in 3 people to die, to have another vaccine, is that, I mean, am I going crazy here?
Yeah,
am I out of my mind in saying that?
Oh, not if you're in Silicon Valley, you see, because if you buy a phone, you know that after a few years, it needs upgrading.
Right.
Or if you download Windows, you're going to need a new version.
What if the phone gives you a brain hemorrhage?
Well,
you just get a better phone.
You need to get a better phone deal.
You don't just think, oh, maybe I'll go back to one of those Nokia 3210s. That didn't give me a brain hemorrhage. I was fine before I got this phone. But now the answer is I just need a more sophisticated phone. I see. Listen to this, Daniel. This is further bad news. Ministers may have to consider culling or vaccinating animals which are found to be harboring the virus in order to stop it potentially picking up another mutation. Is that your dog?
I think I should go and just cover his ears. Really.
However, the SAGE report also claimed it was equally realistic that COVID will mutate to become less lethal over time. Phew! That's now.
Well, I think the British would go nuts if we start having to
kill their dogs.
Kill their dogs. That will be one step too far.
I mean, sometimes my dog barks a lot, and I do wish someone would take him off somewhere. Anyway, sorry to all dog lovers. Scientists unveil the threat of a super mutant variant. That reminds me of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. A super mutant ninja variant in a paper that looked at potential scenarios that could emerge in the not so distant future. Experts who weren't named said a future strain may be resistant to vaccines.
Funny, they usually like giving their names when they go to the press as advisors.
Exactly. If it came about by the jab-resistant beta variant. There's a beta variant, so it's gone back 2 letters in the Greek alphabet now, with the more transmissible alpha or delta variants. This process, known as recombination, could lead to a strain with increased...
Well, there's another name for this process, but we won't... That's for sensitive ears, and it ends with up.
Oh, man, I can't be bothered to read all this out. Dr. Philippa Whitford, vice chair of some group on coronavirus, said this report, which should have sent shockwaves through the UK government, was instead quietly snuck out among a glut of reports during parliamentary recess. etc., etc., etc. Lots of stuff about the SNP don't like what the government are doing. What a surprise, etc., etc. There was more about killing of cats here. Oh yeah, the group warned further culling or animal vaccinating may be needed in order in other species to prevent them becoming reservoirs for the virus. They listed dogs, cats, mice, rats, and ferrets as animals who are known to have been infected with COVID. Quickly, vaccinate all the ferrets. Do you know any ferrets? Bring them to the ferret vaccination centre.
I'm not that part Devon, really.
Number 10.
Snakes? Can we have snakes?
It doesn't mention snakes, actually. Number 10 has already launched an antivirals task force with the goal of finding drugs that Britons can take at home to treat any symptom of COVID. Oh, they're actually trying to find other ways of, etc. No, I like the idea of opening some ferret vaccination centres, Daniel. We don't have enough of those. And if you can't vaccinate them, then just kill them. What about rats? How are you going to vaccinate rats and mice? Surely you just leave them poison up them.
Maybe they ought to negotiate on that procurement. What would be the rate per animal for vets? You know?
Yes. Well, it's going to be a big money spinner for vets, isn't it? Like it's been for GPs, I think, because they'll get, presumably the larger the animal, the more money they'll get for vaccinating it. So like a dog will be a tenner, cat's a fiver, ferrets £3, and then probably mice and rats 50p each. What do you think? Something like that.
You could have a job lock. Can you imagine? I mean,
yeah.
You can have a sort of a new kind of home guard that come round to exterminate.
Yeah. It just makes you think, like, what are they going to say next? I mean, it's just, I just
your
don't
vaccine
understand.
passport could have reference to, do you have any pets at home?
Yes, you could. Yeah, the more vaccines you have, the more pets you're allowed. It'll be like the Chinese one-child policy, but with ferrets.
Yeah.
Have 7 vaccines, and you can have a ferret for a pet, but not a cat. That's only for very special people who do their exercise and don't go to McDonald's and just eat salad.
What made me laugh about this article, not laugh, weep, was earlier in the year, I forget who was it. Was it the guy who worked for the Gates Foundation who said that please don't attempt mass vaccination?
Oh yeah,
population because that will put a virus under pressure.
Yes,
and it potentially could hypermutate.
Yes.
Because you create a wall for this bug, in a sense, to learn to jump, and eventually one will, and then that's the one that reproduces.
Yeah.
And everyone's, he's a nutcase. Anybody who's sort of saying,
he's a conspiracy theorist. He's a conspiracy theorist.
You're not going to get a super bug, and all this and that. It's just like the Wuhan lab leak thing. That was, you get removed from social media for putting this out.
Yeah.
And well, it could have happened. It probably did happen now. Oh yeah, it's all.
But it's okay. It's okay because we can just make another vaccine, Daniel. We can just make another vaccine. It doesn't matter if the vaccine kills 1 in 3 people on the planet. Just make another one. It's fine, isn't it? This is just madness. And I think, the only way I can sort of explain this is that people are so terrified that it's like, I was listening to something the other day where they were talking about the way that fear basically fear is such a sort of primal emotion that it sort of clouds out everything else. And you lose the ability to sort of empathize or to rationalize or to think clearly about things. You just think, come on, this virus, just trust the evidence of your senses, right? Is there really a massive pandemic going on? Or
Keir Starmer did predict, however, the beloved leader did say 3 weeks ago that there would be 100,000 people getting this every day.
Dying every day, or just
I can't remember, but
testing positive.
He looked very earnest.
Were they people or ferrets?
Who knows?
He predicted 50,000 positive ferret tests per day
and
in a mass culling.
Like the horoscopes might be slightly off miss this week. You know.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I'm not going to read any more of it out, but that Doug Wilson article, Kicked Out of Hell for Lying, it just is absolutely spot on. It's the best kind of satire of these so-called experts that I think I've ever read. But it is absolutely laughable. It really is. The amount of times at the very beginning of this whole thing, the first thing that I saw that made me think, hang on a second, is this actually what's going on? Is this actually real, or is this just exaggeration? Was when I read about Neil Ferguson's track record, and honestly read about it. I can't remember which one it was, but one of the predictions he made, I think it was swine flu. In 2005, if I'm not wrong, he made some prediction that something like 200 million people would die worldwide, and then the overall death toll was declared to be 177. You know, and he's done it's slightly out. He's done this kind of thing. Sorry, it might not be the swine flu. That's just coming off the top of my head from that Toby Green book, the COVID consensus. But apologies, I've got that wrong. But those figures definitely appear in one of his predictions, and he's done this several times. It's not even, and he's done it in the last year and a half, over and over again. Made these predictions that just never come true. He's a false prophet, Daniel. He's a false prophet of the science. Give him a sandwich. Make sure it's healthy. Make sure it's made of spelt bread, so that he doesn't get too much gluten.
Mr. Ferguson is. I'm not really a betting man, but I wouldn't go to him if I said, which horse do you think's going to win the Grand National? Here is this eminent computer scientist, statistician who you think would have, all the horses lined up and worked out.
Yes,
it'd be a sure bet for a good return, but I think the evidence maybe points that, no, I wouldn't go to Neil.
I wouldn't be going to Neil for very much, to be honest. Daniel, let's talk. I know you've got to go reasonably soon today, but let's talk church news. Having skewered the experts like some kebab meat. So this is honestly, Daniel, I was disappointed when you told me about this. Rowan Williams, former Archbishop of Canterbury, a man, I have to say, I wrote part of my doctoral thesis on the work of Rowan Williams. I've got a great amount of respect for him as an intellectual and as a thinker, but this is really disappointing. Rowan Williams has declared that Greta Thunberg is a prophet for our times. Lord Williams, keynote speaker at the ecumenical conference held in Seljord, was responding to questions following a Bible study on the Old Testament prophet Jeremiah. Asked about modern examples of prophetic living, Lord Williams said, God has raised up a prophet in Greta Thunberg in a way that no one could predict. She has said things that no one else could have said. Thank God for her. He admires her enormously, and she's a very good example of a prophetic voice who, like Jeremiah, roused the spiritually slumbering. Yes. Now, I find this... Well, let's read this bit, actually. The Civitas paper, Rotting from the Head, documented the wholesale acceptance of notions of systemic racism, unconscious biases, and an unfolding climate emergency doctrine within the Church of England. In the foreword, Tom Harris said, complete departure from the Church's central purpose risks making it unrecognizable to the grassroots members who support it. It marked a separation of the head from the body that is becoming alarmingly recognizable in so many of our national institutions. Researchers said there was a common denominator of leadership acquiescence or a particular vulnerability among leaders about their approach to society, ordinary human values, and a laziness in objecting to questionable claims and narratives, often to appease relentless and large-scale agitators. The chapter on the doctrine of climate emergency, in inverted commas, Well, it should be the emergency that's in comma, shouldn't it? Which postulates that unless immediate and drastic action is taken now to reduce global emissions, then nothing short of a crisis will unfold for the planet. Another crisis! Demonstrated the hierarchy of the Church of England has adopted this ultra-progressive view without question. All of which is very familiar to us, and I'm sure to many of our listeners as well. I find this really disappointing, and I think just, you know, you have to wonder, someone like Rowan who's like, honestly, what is he thinking saying this? There are a number of points I would pick up on. So for a start, so can we really say that the climate change activist movement is a spiritual movement? Is that really what it is? Is it an unambiguous work of the Holy Spirit? And can you really say that Greta Thunberg is a prophet of God? I mean, does she even profess to be a Christian? I'm not even sure about that. But then the other thing that I really would like to pick Lord Williams up on, and as I say, I have a great respect for him, but is she an example of something prophetic? It seems to me that to advocate for climate change activism is about the least prophetic thing you can possibly do. And the reason for that is that my understanding of prophetic utterance is when you say things which are not things people want to hear, but are nevertheless true anyway. So, you know, if you go out protesting about climate change, you know, the world will applaud you and say you're really great, which is exactly what's happened with Greta Thunberg. But if you actually go out and speak about the things that people don't want to hear about, like abortion, for example, which the Church of England never talks about, then you're greeted with scorn. And it would seem to me that people who go out and protest about the killing of unborn children are far more prophetic than somebody who talks about climate change. I mean, what do you think, Daniel?
Last year, in the offices of the New York Times, I think this is happening in the Guardian as well, but not to the same degree as yet, that there was this internal civil war between you might call the genuine old lefties, the sort of Rowan Williams types, you know.
Yeah.
Children of the revolution, baby boomers, and their successors, you know, the wokerati. And of course, the children of the revolution, or the grandchildren of the revolution, shocked the children of the revolution in their methods, and in the New York Times case, in their editorial policy, their journalism, their sheer viciousness. And I do wonder if we could begin to see some of this happening within the church, that you know, what we might call the old sort of Southwark School Anglican liberal progressive lefty types are beginning to feel a little bit uncomfortable about what is emerging in front of them. Yet, but they still hold this naive kind of Shangri-La, optimistic view of everything that's completely incongruent with reality.
Yeah.
You know, and I think there's a little bit of that in Dear Rowan. I think John Milbank as well is in a similar vein, actually. Another well-known theologian of about the same generation. You know,
slightly younger,
yeah, sort of modestly traditional in theology, left-wing in politics, progressive in personality, yet doesn't quite know what to do with the forthcoming generation that seems to want to cancel everything.
Yeah.
Because my take on Greta would be that she's much more a child of the woke generation, and that, you know, if it disagrees with you, cancel it.
Yeah, absolutely. I found this staying at a friend's house, and I don't mean this in a critical way, but we found a book they had about Greta Thunberg for children, and it was like a children's story, and it told this story, this imaginary story about how these there's this young girl called Greta, and like this fox came up to her. I think it was a fox. And then she had to go into the forest to help this fox. And it turned out there was these big giants and they were destroying the forest. And they also had this city where there was all this pollution that was going into the air. And it was really every like all the plants were dying and the animals were dying and stuff. And they had to go and sort of, kill these giants. I mean, I gave it a cursory glance, I didn't read it in detail. I didn't do a close textual reading, but you flick to the end of the book and then it has this sort of did you know section. It's like this is not based on a true story, but it's based on a real person called Greta Thunberg. And Greta Thunberg, when she was a young child, she found out about climate change, which meant that, or it said something like, which means that scientists have basically said that the world is getting warmer because of whatever it is, carbon dioxide, and that therefore the world is going to become inhospitable and we're all going to die. And so what she did is she heroically went and skipped school and she started protesting again outside, whatever it was, the Swedish embassy, holding a sign saying, "Stop climate change," or "Strike for climate." That's what it said. But it was really interesting to me, that juxtaposition of a story where something's actually happening before her eyes. There were these monsters, like real giants who were actually doing things. And then the image of a small girl, I don't know how old she was, 12 years old, 13 years old, being terrified in a science classroom through the preaching of these abstract ideas, to the extent that she decided to miss school to go and strike for climate. This totally abstract idea, which could be true, but it could very well not be true. And there could be all sorts of explanations for why the world is entering into a warmer period, which are not to do with anthropogenic climate change. And there may be all sorts of outcomes that might come about as a result of the world warming up. There may be things that we don't even know about, like, for example, the temperature of the sun or something like that. But this young girl, she was taught these things in a classroom. And so she's now dedicated her life to what is essentially an abstract idea, which is, all right, lots of scientists think it's true, obviously, but it's nevertheless highly speculative. And it just struck me once again, this gap, this tangible gap between the evidence of your eyes and your senses, these big giants, smashing up the forest, that really would be a big problem. And this abstract idea, which is, the world is going to get warmer unless we all go and, I don't know, get rid of our cars. And I had a ride in a Tesla, by the way, recently. Oh my goodness, it was unbelievably fast. It was crazy. I'm not going to tell you who was driving it because you'll get arrested. But oh my goodness, it was like taking off in a fighter jet. It was really impressive, but they cost 50 grand minimum. So anyway, that's my rant on that. Daniel, did you see this article? You did, because you introduced me to it. Church Times, yay! We love the Church Times, yay! The Church Times, what a good newspaper. Religious protesters. Daniel, I was so disappointed we weren't in it. Can you believe it? I mean, I was actually at a protest recently, and I haven't been included. Can you believe? And I'm an Anglican clergyman. And you know what's even worse is they don't even mention the lockdown protests, which is funny, isn't it? Because
what protests?
Yeah, the biggest protests since the ones against the Iraq War. Lots of people have heard of them, but yeah, the Church Times, religious protesters, tables to be overturned, footage of the Black Lives Matter demonstrations, the response to the killing of Sarah Everard by a police officer, Greta Thunberg, and the school strike movement and Extinction Rebellion demonstrations that brought roads in central London to a standstill, shows that people are taking to the streets in significant numbers, even despite the pandemic. Where's the mention of the lockdown protests, Church Times? Have you got some kind of political agenda? Is there some kind of agenda going on here? Maybe.
We're part of the Spectator Telegraph axis of evil.
Yes, indeed. Although, I'm my own man, David. Daniel. This is for me, this is new media. Yeah, we're new media. We're out there on the fringes, on the prophetic edge of the news. Right. Some Christians involved in these protests taking a stand is nothing new. The Reverend Martin Newell, a Roman Catholic priest from Birmingham, is involved in
seminary.
Really? Do you know him?
Yeah.
Well, do you know what he's involved in? Daniel, guess what he's protesting? Take a wild guess. Just pluck something out of the air.
Well,
come on, just the first thing that comes into your mind.
Saving the unborn child?
No, it's climate change. Christian climate action, which operates alongside, Extinction Rebellion. He spent 6 months in prison, also breaking into RAF Wittering and causing £28,000 worth of damage while disarming vehicles that transport Britain's nuclear weapons. He's age 53. He's pro-peace. He's against nuclear weapons. And he became convinced that Jesus was a pacifist and that he should be one too, and etc., etc. He grew up conservative. He would have voted Thatcher if he'd been old enough. And then he realized that he wanted to break the law for the right reasons. Jesus actively opposed the unjust laws and structures of his day. But did Jesus break the law? There's an interesting question. Did he break the law? I'm not sure. Render to Caesar what is Caesar's. Interesting question. Seriously, I think I would break the law. I definitely would break the law under certain circumstances, for sure. I think everyone should. For example, if the law was to, as we talked about before, not have blacks on buses, that's an unjust law and it should be broken. So I'm not getting at him there. Reverend Nick Holtham, recently retired Bishop of Salisbury, formerly the CV's lead bishop on the environment, very, very important role that. Wrote in this paper, that's the Church Times, that some of the tactics of Extinction Rebellion had, quote, strained relationships. And the Archbishop of Canterbury said, we have to respect everyone for being human. You can be disrespectful in the way you demonstrate.
I mean, people are either human. I didn't know there was any other category, really. Unless we're back to transhumanism.
Yes, indeed. So Father Newell once he says a woman, they were blocking the road, the Extinction Rebellions, and a woman came up to him. She was a carer and couldn't get to her work, so he gave her some money for the tube because he felt bad. But, he says, without these protests, the awareness about the climate emergency would be less, and that would be catastrophic. Also, the lifestyles we lead and the way our economic system exploits other countries, disrupting people's lives overseas all the time. You know what disrupts people's lives overseas? Are lockdowns, plunging hundreds of millions of people into poverty. We never hear about that in the Church Times, though. The wars the UK has waged on other countries, which kill and maim, cause far more destruction than our protests. Look at Jesus driving out the moneylenders in the temple. The activities taking place there were among the most important for faithful Jews. And Jesus thought it was appropriate to disrupt that. If Jesus thought it was okay to cause disruption in the face of injustice, then it's okay by me. And he says that the police like dealing with non-violent protesters. We're nice. We're not a danger to them. Their job is usually much more stressful than dealing with us. So there we go, Daniel.
Unless it's lockdown protesters.
In which case they should be battered about the face, particularly of their children, because they need to be taught early that their role is not to protest against lockdowns. Daniel, where's our invitation by the Church Times? I mean, are you, come on.
Maybe it's a two-parter.
Maybe we're going up for a front page news story, clergy who podcast, and then they'd have us up there because we are, Daniel, we don't want to blow our own trumpet, but we are a top 10 UK Christian podcast, frequent top 10. And once we even peaked at number 1. I know we talk about that a lot, but frankly, it was a milestone in the podcasting industry. Anyway, so that's all that stuff, Daniel. Cracked through everything this week. No one can criticize us.
Or maybe Tom.
Well, you can't please some people, can you? Right. Shall I say a quick prayer and then we'll finish off?
Yes, please do.
Yes. Dear Lord, we give you thanks for this fun and hopefully interesting conversation. We pray for your blessing to be upon all of our listeners and for your blessing to be on our country, your blessing to be on Her Majesty the Queen and her government. Give them wisdom, righteousness, and turn them back from any wickedness and mendaciousness that they may be involved in. And we commit ourselves to you and our lives through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen.
Well, thanks so much, Daniel. I enjoyed that one. That was good. And thanks to everyone else. Get in touch, reverendpod@gmail.com. Join us on patreon.com/reverend. Learn how to use Telegram by Googling. Don't listen to my advice because I simply don't know. Okay, Daniel, thanks so much. See you again soon.
Bye.